Welcome to the presentation on 30 ways to protect your psychotherapy social work license from licensing board complaint. I'm Ofer, PhD, a licensed psychologist, ethicist, instructor, expert witness, author, and most importantly, for me at least, anthropologically critical thinker. In addition to my dozens of published articles, 5 books, numerous ethical presentations in the US and abroad, I have served as expert witness defending psychotherapists, dozens of psychotherapists in licensing board hearing, and also served as an expert witness in psychotherapy's malpractice trials. So I have a lot of experience in this area. Let's start with defining the standard of care. The standard of care is a qualities or condition which prevail or should prevail in a particular mental health service, and that a reasonable, prudent practitioner follows. The standard of care, most importantly, is a context base. So beyond no sex with current client, do not exploit, and do not intentionally harm clients, there is no one set of rules that define the standard of care. So what's important to know, the standard of care is not, it's not cover your ass, it's not standard of perfection, it's not an A minus standard, it's a C plus, it's a minimum standard. It's not free of mistakes. Mistakes are humans. Even I make mistakes. Following rigid, does not follow rigid risk management principle of don't touch, don't self-disclose, don't leave the office, don't. It does not follow this rigid risk management principle. It's not ruled by majority. For example, EMDR in the 90s had 4 articles and 5 practitioners. Now it's become big and common in our field, so the standard of care is not always what the majority are doing. It doesn't follow psychoanalytic principle of don't self-disclose, don't leave the office, etc. It's not permanent or fixed. Most of the experience the shift to telemental most of us experience the shift to telemental health in recent years, and this has become we have a different way of operating with the different standards. It's not determined by outcome or cost. So the next thing before I start listing how to protect your license is boundary crossing. I would like to define it is within the standard of care. It's what ethical, illegal, it's including appropriate touch, appropriate gift, ethical dual relationship, appropriate home visit, or self-disclosure. It can be creative and effective intervention. In contrast, boundary violation is when therapists cross the line of decency. It's below the standard of care or outside the standard of care. It's intentionally or recklessly harm or exploit patient. Examples are exploitative business dual relationship or sexual relationship with current clients will be the most common boundary violation. I would like to attend to a concept that a lot of you hear in risk management workshop, the slippery slope faulty myth. It's a faulty myth. Boundary crossing inevitably lead to boundary violation. It's so wrong. Benign touch or ultimately results in sexual touch. Not true. Bartering naturally lead to exploitation. So I just give these 3 examples of how the myth is that boundary crossing lead to boundary violation. A few words about the standard of care, that it is context-based. So downtown in New York City is different than a small village in Alaska. If you do therapy on an aircraft carrier is different than downtown LA. So working remotely with a San Francisco in couple therapy is very different than working in a prison, whereas the primary loyalty when I was a psychologist in the prison was to the prison warden, not to the client in front of me. And So the standard of care in the military is even completely different to what we are used in our private practices, where our primary loyalty is to the high command and not to the soldier in front of us that we are treating. So the standard of care again is context based. What not to do? We'll start with 30 ways to protect your license. Number one, don't make custody recommendation unless you are certified custody evaluator. So therapists should not make any custody recommendation. Don't write an opinion letter about who should have custody. Watch out when a client comes to you with a pre-typed letter for you just to sign. Don't do that. Leave custody recommendation to designated expert. Very, very important. Sometimes the pressure on us treaters to write this letter, and it's indefensible. More things of what to do, not to do, is don't have sex with current client. Even if you elect to get involved with a former client after 2 years or 4 years, whatever your code of ethics says, get consultation. It will help you protect yourself. Don't drink and drive, especially in California. Definitely don't breach confidentiality online or offline, number 4. Number 5, don't engage in complex business dual relationship. If they go wrong, it's become indefensible of required CE for license renewal. It's so odd for me to hear how many people kind of get a note from the licensing board that they are delinquent in their CE requirement. So this was number 6. Number 7, don't get carried away with social media. Number 8, don't text into the night. So texting into the night, it become kind of this long trail of hundreds or even thousands of text or email and social media communication have become one of the prominent evidence of substandard care in board complaints and lawsuits. So some of the attorneys that I work with call it even Dr. Zur, even I, which is kind of with all my liberalism and advocating ethical touch and ethical gifts, and I go to Israel and I come back for the last 30 years with presents to my client, but even I cannot defend this long trail of thousands of text or email. So number 8 is no texting into the night. So establish digital boundaries and watch out to the slippery slope between texting and sexting. So if texting is part of the treatment plan or just for administrative purposes, differentiate between the two. Discuss with your client the text content, what involved in the text, response time. You okay for you to say, I don't do texting or email after 6 p.m. And be very careful about the slippery slope of social networking and becomes a social dual relationship when you connect with your client on social networking. Inform clients that texts are part of the clinical records. And add a section in the office policies regarding text. Like, I don't text after 5 or after 8 p.m., whatever it is. Include all digital communication in the client's record. Because if you don't keep it, the client may keep it, and if neither one of you keep it, it's still available. I have seen it so many times. So just because you erase it, it does not mean. And there is kind of a let me kind of hold on. Yeah, okay. Create a Google alert that will tell you whenever something appears on you online. And there are other sites that also track kind of who Googled you and on what sites you may show up. I have For my name, I have Dr. Zur or Ozur or Ofer Zur PhD. And so I know when my name appear on a website. And the place to put it for you is www.google.com/alert. www.google.com/alerts. And I have alerts like on multiple relationship or standard of care or touching therapy. I have like 40 alerts that I'm interested in the content area. And you can decide how often Google will let you know whether your name or the whatever you put into Google Alert appears. You can do it every. And if your name is not appearing in any new website, there won't be any new mention and you won't get any Google alert. Number 9, concerns that I've seen repeatedly with the boards, with licensing board. I call it the YELP Trap, YELP, or I call it you have been yelped. So modern day consumer post reviews and evaluators on the therapist and on her restaurants, on her house cleaning, whatever, on Yelp, on Angie, Better Business Bureau, Google Business Profile, Facebook page review, Foursquare, etc., etc. So number 9 is something to be really concerned about. What's important for me to convey to you, do not impulsively post protest to a negative review. You see a negative review about yourself, take a deep breath. Consult with experts, and you can ask for recommendation not from client, supervisors, colleagues. Use the opportunity to have a great web presence. And a surprising statistics is that 1 negative review on you and 4 positive review is better than 5 positive reviews. It's more trustworthy. So don't freak out with 1 negative review. And if you feel what I call you have been yelped, I want to ask you, remember, don't contact the client that wrote a negative review. Don't try to resolve it amicably. My suggestion, don't evaluate for legal defamation or liable posting. You may win the case and lose the battle. So don't do these 3 things. So we are shifting right now. It's when the board come knocking, what not to do. We're covering 30 items today, so I'm moving quite fast. There's more information about this on my website, or you can just take quick notes as you're listening to me. Don't ignore the board letter. 11, don't meet with a board investigator by yourself. They can come to the door and say, oh, I just need to talk to you for 2 minutes. Just don't do that. Think about them as police officers with a gun. Number 12, don't respond or write or contact the board without legal representation, without an attorney. Definitely don't contact the client who filed the complaint with the board against you. Number 14, don't alter the records or create new document so you can fix your record or explain what you did or dismiss what you did, whatever it is. Any change to a handwritten or digital is time dated. So if you change anything in the records, it can be timed that you indeed wrote it 6 months ago and decided to add to that or change it or erase or replace in a certain more recent times. So don't do that. What you can do is consult, and you add the consultation report to the record. So, like, I have people who consult with me regularly, and they add to the record, I consulted on this date with Dr. Zur and explained to him blah, blah, blah. So, it's a way to explain in the records without changing the record, but just explaining it in a later date with explaining that you explain it to the consultant. So that's kind of one way to correct the record in an intelligent way. And I have a lot of people who are doing it with me. So when the board come knocking, what to do? We cover what not to do. Now we're covering what to do. 15, contact your insurance company because they're going to pay for that. Select an experienced recommended attorney. The insurance company may have an attorney already, and if not, just get good recommendation. In California, definitely I'll be able to help you find one. Select a top expert witness. So somebody who is expert in custody or I'm expert in boundaries, whatever it is that you have an expert that's most relevant to your case. Number 18, consult and document well cases that are different, complex, or triggering. For example, a cultural issue of Black Lives Matter, gender identity, transition issues. So these issues are complex and kind of the society is split about them. So write your clinical notes really good as well as consult as necessary. You have suicidal client, violent client. We'll talk later on about borderline personality disorder client or psychopathic client. For all this client, create more records or seek consultation all of us have our sensitivity. So cases that trigger or activate you personally, it would be good for you to consult with somebody as well. And as I mentioned already earlier on in the introduction, differentiate between boundary crossing and boundary violation. Appropriate hug is boundary crossing, sexual hug is boundary violation, and it's not the same. Then be careful engaging with attorney in the court. So don't do forensic testimony. Leave forensic testimony for forensic psychology. Even though there may be pressure on you to come to court to testify when you are the treater, you try to avoid it as much as you can. Leave the forensic report and forensic testimony for the forensic expert. And if they put a lot of pressure on you, the attorney or even the judge, get a consultation and to try, people will help you how to get out of it. Or if you do it, it's against kind of your judgment, against your will, because the judge told you to do that. And you need to remember that you will be judged by your process, not by the outcome. And this is where the consultation is important defense. So the standard of care, as I mentioned earlier, is not an A+, it's a C. It's not an A+, it's a C or C- or C+, it's around C. So the outcome, you won't be judged by the outcome. And consultation is a really fantastic way to operate within the standard of care and to be defensive, which is a topic of our presentation today. There are 5 types of consultation. Quickly, we'll go over that. The first one is a hallway consultation or quick phone, Zoom, or FaceTime consultation with a colleague. Number 2 is you can post anonymously on a listserv or chat room or WhatsApp or Signal or social networking your question about the client in a way that you don't identify the client. It's a man, make it a woman. If it's old, make it young, East Coast, West Coast. So disguised. the, the client when you do this kind of thing. Peer consultation group, in person or online, is another way to get consultation. You can call the insurance company and get risk management expert advice, but just remember that the risk management expert advice is protecting the insurance company sometimes more than they're protecting you. But sometimes they are very, very helpful, and I've used them myself. Number five is a kind of more complex and more thorough, is talk to an ethicist, talk to a clinical expert, or talk to a legal advice from an attorney. So there's five type of consultation that you can choose from, according to the case, according to the acuity of the case, etc. And what's important for defense is to document, document, document. So you have the documentation originally, and then you can write in a file, discuss or explain what you did 6 months ago. People write, I explained to Dr. Zur that what I did 6 months ago was for that reason. So it's a way to correct the record or to make the record more complete without changing the record originally. So a lot of people can use consultation with experts so they can add something to the record. This identifies a client unless you have permission, when you do any kind of consultation, of course. Number 20, as a way to protect your license, get the best board investigation insurance coverage. Number 21, put together a good professional will to protect your survivor. Number 22, keep good enough record. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you have to remember what's not in the record didn't happen. So it's not your word against the client's word. If there is a complaint about you, is a client's word against your record. Again, it isn't your word against a client's word where there is complaint to the board or whatever it is. It's a client's word against the record. What's not in the record didn't happen. So if you need to justify things, make sure they are in the record. So make sure that you keep good record in compliance with the state laws, the standard of care, the initial form, consent, treatment plan, progress note, etc. Remember, generally client has the right to review and access their records. So if a client requests for the record, generally we need to give it to them. Keep one set of records, even though HIPAA allowed for 2 sets of records. Keep just one set of record, because at the end of the day, clients do have access to the record, the more private records or so-called private record. Keep one set of record. Thoughtfully document issues of boundaries, whether touch, dual relationship, self-disclosure, gifts, bartering, even though it's a legitimate boundary crossing, it's not boundary violation, nevertheless, thoughtfully document. Document consultation. Document issues of safety and danger intervention. And also to remember that all requests for records should be in writing. A word of caution here: when parents and step-parents request to review a child's record, don't ignore, refuse without serious consideration and consultation, because the parents may not have custody, but they still have access to the medical record. So don't just deny, oh, you don't have custody, I don't need to report to you. It doesn't work this way, so be very, very thoughtful. Number 23, TeleMental Health. The main concern is, there are so many concerns, but the main concern is that you need to have a separate informed consent for TeleMental Health. The second huge concern is when you work with a client cross-state line, when the client is in a state where you are not licensed in. Then we have the concern of verification. Who is a client? Identity, age, location. How do we know what we know? What we think we know? And then sometimes clients, as well as therapists, are on the run in a car or walking in a park on a bicycle. Sometimes there are other people present in the room. I talked to a guy and I didn't know his girlfriend was next to him for the whole 10 sessions we had. And with social media policy, you really need to be very careful about friends requests, and you need to be equally cautious and thoughtful that things that come to you automatically, like Googling your client. So be be thoughtful about it, because a lot of things that kind of normal within the culture of modern culture, on digital culture, the field of psychotherapy, who runs by people my age and older, has not caught up yet. So in emergency, 911 is local, to remind you. It's not a national system, so it's not transferable. When you call 911 and your client is a different state, you don't reach necessarily the 911 where your client is at. The duty to warn and to protect is different from state to state. So when you can have the duty to warn if your client tell you are going to kill somebody or to hurt somebody. So it's different from state to state, and you need to follow the rule where the client is at. And then we have also the clear fact that some clients are not suitable for online intervention or doing testing or doing assessment. An interesting construct with remote therapy or telemental health is the disinhibition effect, where there is excessive self-disclosure by people when they are online compared to being in person. So it's okay when the client have the disinhibition effect and he reveals or she reveals more. You, as a therapist, must be really careful about excessive self-disclosure due to the disinhibition effect. So when we are not in person with a client, we tend to reveal more. It doesn't make it right or wrong. I just want to be thoughtful and aware about the disinhibition effect that may cause you to reveal more than you really meant to reveal. Then we have internet disruption and unauthorized recording on both ends, so kind of part of the complexity of telemental health. Number 24 is we have recent important development in the field. And needless to say, the telemental health is the big one. It's a dominant mode of psychotherapy this day and age, and the latest model is a hybrid model. So you do both in person once a month and 3 times online, or any combination like that. So it increased flexibility to psychologists. We have a psych pack for psychologists right now to work across state line, and I think about 35 states are involved with that, but not all of them. And now counselors and marriage and family therapists are also seeking to have cross-state line agreement with the different states, but it's going slow. Insurance company and Medicare increase reimbursement for telemental health. So, but then there's something new, which is kind of interesting, exciting, scary, whatever it is for you. It's a 24/7 therapy. Kind of the future is here. There are telemental health apps like Talkspace and BetterHelp. I did a 3 minutes consultation with a chatbot, and it was really fascinating when with this robot. It was kind of woman looking at her 40s, and she asked me kind of for my name and where I'm from and what my main concern. And suddenly, after 2 minutes of interview with the robot, it or she said, you know, Ofer, when I ask you about moving out of Berkeley, I heard a quiver in your voice. And wow. So anyway, it was an amazing experience that this robot succeeded to see this wavering, and she was right on. So I, I was sold on that. Number 25 out of the 30, subsequent therapist syndrome. We are our own worst enemy. So many, I would say about 40% of the board cases coming from the next therapist that will say, what? The former therapist hugged you? Or what? The former therapist went for a walk with you? Or what? The former therapist brought you some water from Israel? So it's a, I call it the subsequent therapy syndrome. We're going to do a YouTube on that, as well as I have articles on the topic. One of the best way to deal with this worst enemy of us, which is our colleagues, connect, consult, inform, and update the next therapist. So like when a client is terminate with you and they move to another city, or terminate with you because they're pissed off with you, try to get their permission and to get the knowledge who is their next therapist, to avoid the subsequent therapy syndrome, STS I called it. So once you talk to the subsequent therapy syndrome, and they are less likely to tell the client to call the licensing board. Okay. Number 26, politically incorrect, I call it, you are one borderline away from losing your license. I have a whole YouTube just on that and articles on that. So when you work with borderline personality disorder client, it is incredible shocking what I had to deal with. And the only defense that I could do for this therapist who let the client move in, share their underwear with them, drove them to different places. It's just amazing what therapists will do to avoid the rage of the borderline. So, and many therapists are very good working with borderline. Many are not. So remember this statement, you are one borderline away from losing your license. And this is for us who, for therapists who cannot want to avoid the rage of the borderline, will do things that are unheard of. And it's indefensible. The only way I can defend it in court is to explain to the judge or the jury the power of the borderline, and tell them that even me, Dr. Zur, have been taken as a young therapist when the borderline did not want to sit in the office with me. She wanted just to go for a walk. And when I said no, she just raised her voice at the whole clinic kind of stood up. And then when the next time she wanted to go out of the room, I did. Anyway, I had good supervisors that helped me with that. So you remember this powerful statement, you're one borderline away from losing your license, and take a good inventory. Let's talk about number 27 is civil malpractice lawsuits. And in general, they are rare. When they are take place, it's about the client attempted or committed suicide, texting into the night. I have cases right now when I have 3,000, as I mentioned earlier, texting or social networking into the night. Sex with current or recently terminated client is a lawsuit. Failed complex business dual relationship. Watch out with business dual relationship, I mentioned earlier. And when you breach confidentiality, when you just on the internet or in person. So what's important with that is to just to give you the fact a little bit around it. Psychologists, we pay about $1,200 a year for malpractice insurance. MFTs and social workers and counselors often paying anything between $200 and $400 not much more than that. But then compare it to the cardiologist, the OBGYN, delivery doctor, or anesthesiologist. They are paying between $40,000 a year to above $100,000 a year in malpractice insurance. So when you compare 100,000 to 1,200 or 50,000 to 200, you can see that cardiologists, OBGYN, and anesthesiologists are at real risk. And this is what they pay annually for the malpractice insurance, while we are paying anything between 200 and perhaps 1,200. So our risk for malpractice is very, very low compared to doctors in general, in particular cardiologists, OBGYN, and anesthesiologists. Number 28, it's a complexity that is start rearing its head finally after 30 years. Differentiate clearly coaching from mental health. Many coaches operate very similar to licensed psychotherapists when they consult with individuals on anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, parenting, etc. Coaching is unregulated profession where a license is not required. Any high school dropout can be a coach. So what's important for coaches, and it starts rearing its head right now, is don't use DSM terms because you are not a licensed mental health practitioner or a physician or a medical person. Coaches are advised to include a coaching informed consent and to have these two statements in the coaching contract. One, coaching is not psychotherapy or mental health counseling. It does not treat mental disorder. Two, if I suspect mental disorder, I'll give you a referral for a licensed mental health professional. You can go to the International Coaching Federation and they'll give you a sample on coaching contract. So separate the coaching practice from the mental health license practice completely. Don't include your license number in the coaching website or the coaching page. Separate the two clearly. And for some reason, finally, after so many years, we start seeing some cases, both in the East Coast and West Coast, and I've been involved with them. Number 29 is what we call a dose of ethics. When legal psychedelic are medically advisable for patients, are increasing in popularity. So psychedelic or psychedelic-assisted therapy, it's kind of a new mode where psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, DMT, mescaline. So we have this boom of psychedelic right now. So medical use of psychedelic go back to the 19th century. Psychedelic drugs are still controlled substance in the US. So psychedelic therapy is generally still illegal in the US. But however, psychedelic have been increasing in popularity all over the world. If you choose to work with people with psychedelic, do it as a coach, even though it's still illegal, but not as a licensed therapist. So it's very complex and very, really pay attention to this complexity. Number 30, the last one here, is practicing therapists cross state line. This is time that millions of kids go out of state to colleges. Millions of families are relocating to another state every year. Many millions of people working remotely in different states where you are not present. In principle, you should be at the very least licensed or legally permitted to practice in the state when your patients are located. So it's a very complex issue, but you need to pay attention and to document it. But to be licensed where your patients are located, which is not that easy. And hopefully within 10, 20 years, these things will change. So if your patient is temporary in another state, you may be legally permitted to practice there under temporary practice law. You have to verify it with the state. Psych packs that I mentioned earlier for psychology may be able to engage in interstate practice in some states. Currently, it's about 40 of them. States have this kind of psychological for psychologists to work cross state line. There are more complexity to this topic beyond the scope of this presentation, but at least I want to say that this is a major, major issue. Wow, we cover 30 ways to protect your license. My website at www.drzoo.com include numerous free articles and YouTubes on standard of care, way to protect your license, the risk of risk management, and so much more. Thank you.